As a Texas Realtor, Robin McCoy is in the unique position to meet and know so many different people in a wide range of industries. These people are her tribe, and she leverages them not only to help her business, but to help theirs as well. Welcome to Crushing It with Your Tribe, where we share real talk about building business and life relationships. Here is your host, Robin McCoy.
Hi, everybody. It's Robin McCoy, Texas Realtor, and welcome to Crushing It with Your Tribe. Here today, I have a good friend of mine. I've known Susan for years.
6 years, maybe?
We'll just call it years. Susan is a realtor with Keller Williams, actually out in Colorado. She resides in Castle Rock with her husband and her oldest son, Daniel. She's also got a couple other kids, 29 years old and 26 years old. And she is hairstylist turned realtor and serves the greater Denver area. Now, Susan, I always say that bad things happen to good people, and sometimes really bad things happen to really good people. And that's kind of why we're here today, because we'll let Susan tell the story, but Susan is writing a book, and it is about a trauma she experienced as a child and how that has pulled her into resiliency and what those lessons that she has learned from that. So I'm going to just introduce Susan. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your new book.
Okay. Thanks so much, Robin, for having me, for one. So this has been a journey for sure since I was 17 years old. I will tell you the story. My dad was an LAPD detective, and he was in the middle of an investigation of a robbery ring. And the person that was involved in that robbery ring had a mindset of, if there's no witnesses, there's no case. So they planned for months, and him and his crew planned for months to kill my father. And they were successful on October 31st of 1985. My dad was picking up my 6-year-old brother at the time. And this individual drove by with a MAC-10 and killed my dad. And my dad's last thing that he could do on this earth was to save my brother from the bullets, and told him to duck down in the truck. So my brother was present. And then later, my mom and I were called at home. We were getting ready for Halloween. Your normal, 17-year-old, it was Madonna that year. And I was excited and waiting for my dad to get home because I was hoping to go to a party. And I was hoping to schmooze him a little bit more to get him to be allowed to go.
Let you go.
And instead we got this call, and we went to the school, and my mom and I both witnessed my father's body and the aftermath of what had happened. And
I can't even imagine.
That turned my life upside down.
Sure.
Yeah. So went from having a normal teenage life to something that I wouldn't wish on anyone.
Well, and it's a little different. I mean, the nature of your father's death was so violent and so just bad. I mean, it's violent. It was a criminal act. It wasn't a car accident. It wasn't accidental at all.
Right.
And
he did plan. He was planning. If he couldn't get to my dad alone, he was targeting my brother, myself, my mother, even my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband. And so it's just, in not knowing that right away, they didn't catch him right away. So there were days where I couldn't leave my house. We had 20 Metro officers in our front yard, 20 Metro officers in our backyard. We had helicopters over our house all the time, and it was very intimidating.
Wow. And at 17 and 6, I mean, your brother was 6 years old, and I'm sure your mother was obviously distressed as well. It just, how at that time what went on kind of in your mind? I mean, what was going on up here while all these days before they caught this guy? How do you deal with that?
It was more of a fog. I mean, I was just in a fog. I will tell you, part of the things that I talk about in the book is the realization that when my dad died that night, my mom sort of did too. I was pushed aside a little bit. I mean, so be it. My brother was, he witnessed it, and I get it, and he's small, but I needed a mother too.
Sure.
And I didn't have that. So what I was doing is navigating that whole process in the beginning all by myself, which for a 17-year-old, I didn't have the skills or the tools or the wherewithal to deal with all of the different emotions that were happening at that time.
Sure. I mean, aside from the grief of losing your father and the stress that's going on in your house, there had to be some fear that this guy was going to come. You got cops all over your house. When's he going to come through the back door?
It was completely intimidating. And I felt helpless, even though I had all of this police present. And I wanted to wake up from the nightmare.
Sure.
I didn't sleep that night at all. My first glance in the morning was the sun coming through my blinds. And I realized I hadn't slept all night, and I didn't sleep for days on end. Because every time I shut my eyes, I saw my dad, and it was just so intimidating dealing with that. So, and, my boyfriend, who's my husband now, he too, I'm the one that had to tell him that night. And then so everything moving forward, we both went through the trauma of everything, watching them pull the footage on the news all the time. And it was a major news story. So we were on the news almost every night. And it was intimidating, you know?
I mean, you're 17.
Right.
You're 17. I mean, let's just.
Exactly.
I mean, like you said, a 17-year-old, while on the cusp of adulthood, has no sense of how to deal with a tragedy such as that.
Right.
I mean, grown people today. I mean, if something like that happened, and I'm, 59 years old, I don't know that I would know how to deal with that. So at 17, what do you do? Right now, we'll say that they did catch him.
They did.
And then he got a life sentence. And
he got that. So there was
or a death penalty, excuse me.
Yep. There were 5 men that were involved in 4 of them with the conspiracy. He actually committed it. There's just so much to the story, but 3 of them were convicted. One, the main guy, he's on death row in San Quentin right now. We unfortunately will never see that happen, but he is never getting out either. His right-hand man got life imprisonment without parole. And then there was a 3rd guy. He did about 30, I think he ended up doing 32 years, and he was paroled in 2017. And I got to say, with that, it was a good thing that he was paroled, just for the fact that we had to relive it every 3 years when he came up.
When he came up for parole, you had to go do something about it.
When you're working really hard to move past your grief and you're on your journey, it's really hard to go forward and then come back and then go forward and then come back. So I was actually a little relieved that he was paroled, and all I have to think about was hoping that he would change his life and he would learn from his mistake with connecting with this guy who killed my dad. And I'm not going to use their names, but and I don't in my book. But yeah, I think the big lesson there was, I just needed to keep moving forward. And it was hard for me in the beginning But once I found forgiveness, it was a little bit easier.
And I think when, like you said, is your hope is that he learned from what he did and where he spent however many years he was in prison, and that he will come out and be a different person and do some good in this world.
Well, I hope so.
So that your dad's death isn't in vain.
Right. Well, and he's never taken responsibility for his part, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
But, in the same token, when you are on this road to resiliency, you've got to keep moving and pushing forward,
Right.
And finding what is healthier for yourself.
So do you find, so during this journey, right, to resiliency, at what point, so this happened when you were 17, how long, I guess, emotionally and mentally, and I mean, you had your normal growing up to do, right? Your normal coming into an adult and planning your life. And how long do you feel like it took you from 17 to be able to actually talk about it and maybe put it on paper and actually share this experience?
Well,
are you still going through it?
No, I mean, going through it, I'm always learning, and writing this book and editing this book with my editor. There's been so much that has healed for me, and so much like clarity around a lot of different things, and a lot of different relationships I've had. I will tell you that immediately LAPD put us in therapy. I had never seen a therapist before. I didn't know what to expect.
Sure.
All I knew is that at the time I was extremely suicidal. I went through bouts where the depression was super bad, but being a kid, I didn't know how to vocalize those feelings, and nobody was asking me.
Right.
So if nobody was asking me, I was just kind of holding them in. We went through the therapy, and even the therapist never asked, never dove, never asked the right questions to get me to come out with that. So basically all he concentrated on was my relationship with my mother, my relationship with my brother, school, and my boyfriend. And that's it. So I went through an entire year of walking this fine line. And at the end of the year, my therapist looked at me and said, "Susan, you're well-rounded, young lady. I think you're going to do fine for the rest of your life. And I don't need to see you anymore." And that was my first therapy session. That was my first experience with a therapist.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, wow, I'm still wanting to walk the plank.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm still in that mindset of, I want to be with my dad, right? And, and it was fleeting. They were fleeting because that's what depression does to you.
Sure.
One day you're fine. The next minute you're not. You've gone through grief yourself. So you know what I'm talking about. And anyone who has knows what I'm talking about. So, honestly, it didn't take until Columbine, when we moved here from Southern California to Colorado, when Columbine happened, I had a full-fledged mental breakdown, and I could not understand why.
Yeah, it triggered, but you didn't know why.
No, I didn't know that I had PTSD.
Right.
And now I'm a mom of 2 children, and I'm married, and my husband was like, I just couldn't understand it. I stood there and I watched the TV at the salon that I was working at, and all of the TV stuff was coming on, and I'm seeing the ambulances, I'm seeing the police department, the police officers, I'm seeing children who were my own age. And I started having flashbacks, and things just started to evolve. And I couldn't understand it. I started going down the road of suicidal ideation. And my husband looked at me one day and he said, you have two choices. You either go get yourself some help right now, or I'm taking you to a hospital. And it was serious.
Yeah.
And honestly, when I finally found a therapist that looked me in the face and said, you have PTSD and every kind of mental thing that has happened to you, with anxiety, with depression, with all suicidal ideation, all of these things are normal. I was like, what? From the time I was 17 to that time, I thought I was nuts. I thought something was wrong with me. I thought that, my mom wasn't helping me through stuff. Like, I knew nothing and I felt crazy. I
felt like you were broken, that your dad's death and what this man did to your family broke you.
Yeah, broke me. And so once I started through that therapy, then I started to realize, oh my God, there's other people out there that need to know how to navigate this.
Yeah.
Maybe there's other children, maybe there's other young adults, maybe there's just other adults out there that no one has ever heard or helped. We have, there's books, there's tons of books out there, but maybe through my experience that I can help somebody. So that was kind of where the thought of the book came.
Yeah.
And back then, I was 30, early 30s. And I just said, one day I'm going to do it. But I didn't feel like I was ready yet.
Right.
I didn't feel that I was ready.
You just didn't feel like you could tell the story the way it needed to be told?
Right.
Because you didn't have it all
right,
like filed properly in your brain.
Right. There were pieces missing, because when you go through trauma, when you go through PTSD and trauma, there's parts of your brain that are affected, literally. And so when that happens, there was parts of time in my story that I couldn't connect. So I needed to be able to be at that place to be able to put timelines together, right? I even had to ask my husband, like, how long was it between the time my dad was killed and when they caught him? And that kind of thing, because my brain, like my memory is shoddy.
Well, it's defense mechanisms, right? Your brain protects us.
Yes. So if I was going to tell my story, I needed to be confident in my timelines.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So that didn't happen until I was 50.
Well, and that's okay. Right? I mean, because you said before that it's all about resiliency is learning to move forward.
Right.
And nobody can tell you, all right, it's been 20 years. It's time you got over that.
Right.
And though people will tell you that.
Oh gosh.
People will tell you that.
Yes.
It's so individual, and your brother is going through a different journey with this, and your mother goes through a different journey with this, and how you all handle it is obviously going to be different.
Right.
And if it takes 40 years,
right,
30 years, whatever that is, from point to point, then that's the time frame.
Be the leader you know you can be. Build your professional network and access education that takes you where you want to go. We are women of all ages and backgrounds. You deserve national recognition and opportunities to build relationships with people you want to work and grow with. Hit the ground running with the Charisma chapter of the American Business Women's Association. Meetings each month from 6 to 8:30 p.m. on the fourth Tuesday in Farmers Branch, Texas, and online. Come with us. Experience ABWA for yourself. Go to charisma.abwa.org to learn more.
And if it takes 40 years,
right,
30 years, whatever that is, from point to point, then that's the time frame.
Well, and I had always like, even though like the book didn't come up right away, I always knew that I wanted to handle it in a way where I wasn't the victim, that
Okay.
I was the survivor.
Yes.
I watched my mom and my brother go a different route, and I was not about to do that. I am my father's daughter. I say it all the time. I really am.
I do too.
And so I feel like moving forward, he was going to help me in some sort of way,
Sure.
and he has. I felt like I needed to live between the time I was 30 to the time I was 50 when I finally decided to do the book. And that was all about like, I'm 50 years old. I need to get this thing done. I've got purpose. Like, this is my purpose. I need to help people through my story, through my journey, and through the lessons I learned. So the book has been so cathartic just for myself, and it really pieced things together for me. So if someone, I have a passion for coaching.
Mm-hmm.
I will be able to, because I'm okay in where I am mentally, I'm able to help other people.
Right.
And you know what I mean? So it took me a while, but that was it. And I turned 50. I said, this sucker is going to happen. And I'm going to be 54 in a couple weeks.
Well, and I remember when early on when we met, you were talking about this book and you had a name for it. And you had, I guess drafts, if you will, of it. And you said, I just haven't got it together to send to an editor. It's coming out, but it's coming out of me,
Yeah.
but it's not ready to go
right
to other people.
Part of that is that when you're writing a memoir, you're raw.
Yeah.
You're putting it all out there. So a lot of my, trepidation around it was fear. And I finally something snapped one day and I went, I don't care. Like, this is who I am. And some people are going to, they're going to find fault in it, and that's fine.
It's your memoir, not theirs.
Family members may do that,
right.
And that's fine. I just, my brother and I, we've healed our relationship, which is great. But, it's just hard putting yourself out there like that and just being so raw and being so vulnerable. But, I started listening to Brené Brown.
Yeah.
Talks about the vulnerability thing and how it's connected to being brave. And
yes,
I just remember as a child, my dad always saying, you gotta be brave, and so that just stuck with me. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to be brave. I'm just going to put it out there.
Yeah.
And,
I love that.
And my hope is, like, I didn't write it for me, although it's been cathartic.
Yeah.
I wrote it for the people out there that are struggling, that need something to connect to, that there's certain things in my book, throughout my book, and it's short, sweet, and to the point. But there's lessons that can be learned in a few different situations in my life. So,
because I think, and you say there are people, whether they had a father that was assassinated by a criminal, right, or they lost a child or a parent, or right, any number of different traumas,
right,
that it can all get related back, and how difficult those steps are, whether it takes 3 steps or 3,000 steps to get to that place.
You just got to start. And it does. It's like stepping off a cliff. It really is. But I tell people all the time that I coach that you've got to do the work, right, in order to find freedom from your pain.
And that's probably what this book was a lot of work, yeah, of just looking at it, right? Yeah. Opening yourself up, just gutting yourself, right, and looking at it from up here instead of in it.
Yep. And a lot of it too is I didn't I couldn't worry about how others were going to react to my book, because there's people in my book that I speak the truth of, and they're not going to like what I had to say, but it is my reality. It's my experience. It's, and I don't vilify them at any point. I mean, they might feel it, but that wasn't my purpose.
Right.
It was just to show that you can go through these things and you learn to put, boundaries and, the healthy way of doing things for yourself.
So that's probably one of the lessons you learned. We talk about boundaries all the time, but I would imagine.
Yes, absolutely. So, and so that's my hope, that, somebody will pick up this book and feel connected to it, because maybe they've had those thoughts, or they've had kind of the same experience, or whatever it is. Everybody goes through traumas, it's,
good. Like I said, bad things happen to good people, and really bad things can happen to really good people.
Absolutely.
And it's all on how we choose,
right,
to deal with whatever that situation is.
Exactly.
And as a child, you only have this much ability to choose because you've got this much life experience.
Right.
But by the time you're 50, you've got that much more life experience.
Right.
And you're better capable of looking at the pieces of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Absolutely. And I can just imagine, having to put boundaries up if people are not, and it's hard because some people are your family.
Right.
Or they've just been with you forever.
Yep.
But they're not helping.
Right.
They're not helping your healing.
No.
Your growth.
Yeah. And I speak about this when I do speak, is that at 17, I had to figure it out for myself. I had to find the people along the way that were going to help me move forward or help me feel better. I didn't rely on a parent. I relied on myself. I relied on my boyfriend, who's my husband. I tried to do that, but on the other side of that is that I spent many years in this is my burden, because people would come to me and say, how can I help? How can I support you? And I had been in this this like hamster wheel of fight, flight, or freeze for so many years that I just, I'm going to do this on my own. This isn't your problem. I'm going to handle it.
Yeah.
I'm not putting this burden on you, and so even through my coaching with my coach, she made me realize, like, that's not healthy. And right. And
yeah.
So
yeah.
Then I had to realize that when I was negating other people who wanted to support me and who wanted to love me, and I was pushing them away, and that is not who I am either. So that was the other thing, is, the realization that when you're going through a trauma, when you're going through a healing or a grief journey, you have to learn for yourself to accept the support, because you are helping that other person who is actually supporting you.
Because they need to do that too.
Absolutely.
They need to be needed by you.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
And it took me many years in writing a book to figure that out,
Well, and I had my coach tell me that, when you have these feelings and these emotions and this grief, that you need to honor those feelings, those emotions. Pushing them down is like a beach ball that you're trying to keep under the surface of the water in the swimming pool. You can't do it. It's going to do this.
Yeah. I mean, that's even through anxiety attacks and things that would happen to me. I would try to stuff it. But then when you do that with an anxiety attack, for instance, a panic attack, it lasts longer or you have multiple ones, one after another.
Yeah.
The problem is that the human condition is nobody wants to run into pain. They just don't want to do it, right? They're like, no, I want to go to pleasure.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And, and so in doing that, people go to drugs and alcohol and, sex addict stuff and, whatever it is, they find a different way to hide from the pain.
Yeah.
But what people need to understand is if you run right into it, obviously with a therapist,
with support, the support that you need,
support system behind you, but when you run right into it, you're able to run through it and you learn lessons through that journey. And most people don't want to do that. And I just keep telling people, like, I have such freedom in the fact that I bulldozed many times through a lot of pain and a lot of things through EMDR therapy and, and talking therapy and just all kinds of different cognitive therapies.
Sure.
Find what works for you, not everything works for everybody, right? So you just got to find what works for you, but man, just
do the work.
It sucks. I mean, I tell my own children this, like, it sucks. It's not easy. But when you bulldoze through it, when you get through it, man, the freedom you feel on the other side.
Well, and you know what you're capable of now.
Right.
You realize just how strong
right.
you are.
Yep.
And if you can get through that fire,
mm-hmm.
what else are you capable of? You're capable of amazing things.
Exactly. And I feel like I tell people this all the time and they kind of look at me like I'm green with pink polka dots, but my purpose on this earth was through my dad's death.
I believe that.
And, people go, what? But it's true.
Well, I mean, yeah, you'd be completely different.
We don't understand them. We don't understand. We're not guaranteed, certain days on this planet. However, I feel like when you're given certain things in life, you can either curl up in a corner in the fetal position and just allow it to envelop you, or you can move through it, learn from it, and then turn around and help others.
Use that. It gives you a power. It gives you a power to do good.
Absolutely. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm using my power.
I love that. Well, the name of the book is The Other Side of the Gun, My Journey from Trauma to Resiliency. And when do we guess it might show up in the world?
I am putting it into the universe. And it'll be here before the end of the year.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're at the final stages of editing. It's got a couple of other processes and it's got to get to the designer.
Sure.
But once it's done that, it'll be on Amazon and I will be hitting the road running with it. So.
Well, and you also speak about this.
I do. Yes.
So tell me just a little bit about that, kind of, that you're available for speaking, I'm guessing, to any organization or group.
Absolutely. So when I talk about, generally when I'm speaking more about the journey. It's more about giving people ways. What are the ways that I got through it?
Right.
What were the modalities I used? What was my own experience in suicidal ideation and things? Because mental health, unfortunately, is still a taboo,
unfortunately,
type thing to speak about. So, but I feel like the more that people understand what it looks like, and how people, who are struggling internally are usually outwardly happy people.
Right.
Outwardly, I mean, how many times have we seen even celebrities where you're like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't get it. Well, I walked this earth and everybody thought, oh, Susan, you're so strong. You're so strong. You're doing so good. And I was literally hot mess express for years.
Yeah.
Even in my own marriage, even with my being a mom, I struggled. I worked to be the best mom I could be. I took, I told you I collect children.
Yeah.
Not in a weird way.
Yeah, in a good way. Let's frame that in a good way.
Yes, I collect children who maybe need some extra support. They're not getting as much support within their own family. And I feel like, it takes a village. And I think that stems from my
Not getting, yeah.
So, and now I'm collecting grandchildren from those. And I just
well, if anybody out there should be collecting children in a good way, it's you.
Oh, thank you. I love all my kids. I love all my kids, and I love them equally. And I feel like everyone deserves the support system. Everyone deserves to know that they are loved unconditionally, that they're enough. We hear that a lot. And I know now through this journey of writing and speaking that I am enough.
Yeah.
That I am okay at who I am. And it has been a journey. It has been a long, process. So, and I continue, you don't just stop one day. Oh, okay, I'm done.
All better. If only, right? If only.
Yeah, if it's that easy. No, but speaking to people, when I speak, I look into their eyes. I like to connect with people. I don't care if I'm speaking to hundreds of people. It doesn't matter. I feel like people need to connect with me so that they know that I'm genuine, in what I'm saying, and that I do care and I do want to help people. And that's why people like Brené Brown, she's my spirit animal.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love her. I mean, Tony Robbins is a very intense man, but I love how he's able to look you in the eyes and really get you to be vulnerable and speak your truth.
Well, and feel your feelings, right? Like you said, speak your truth, feel your truth, and own it.
Right.
And learn how to live with it.
Right.
And soften the edges around it a little bit.
Yeah, I always want to give people a safe space.
Yeah.
A safe space to be able to tell their story, to know that, I'm there to support them. I'm not there I don't care what people tell me. It's just, that's their story and that's what's important to them. And, and so it's important for people to be heard.
Yes. Well, and I think that's part of the mental health.
People are not heard.
They're not heard.
Yeah. It's really unfortunate.
And there's some people that can force themselves to be heard.
Yeah.
And others that maybe can't. And they deserve to be heard.
Or they're afraid to.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I have one of those children. I was over at his parents' house and I told his mom about the book. And I started to talk to her about it, kind of like what you and I are talking about. And they listened to what I had to say. It was kind of weird. It was like a pin drop, but at the same token, they were able to tell me, and we've always chit-chatted.
Yeah.
They were able to tell me some really personal things that they went through themselves. And the therapies and the modalities that they utilized and stuff. And that felt great because I was like, oh my gosh, I gave them a safe space. They were able to come out. They were able to be vulnerable with me. And it just quantified why I'm doing what I'm doing, right? Because
the signs show up.
Who are afraid to say something, who are afraid to put themselves out there. And I don't want that for people, because you can't heal if you don't tell your story.
Yeah.
Can't.
I mean, because otherwise the stories that we tell just go on repeat right here instead
And
of
God
putting them
knows
out there.
we tell ourselves.
And so often if you say, the stories that we tell ourselves,
Yeah.
and then if you actually say it out loud,
Right.
or you there's a exercise in some group, I can't remember what it was, where you had to think about the most ridiculous, what do you think about yourself?
Yeah.
What is one story you tell yourself? And then turn to your neighbor and introduce yourself that way. Hi, my name's Robin, and
Right.
I have to be perfect, or I have to be the smartest person in the room, or whatever
Right.
those stories are, where if we're not perfect, we think we're a failure. But if you introduce yourself that way, it sounds kind of silly.
Well, what's really crazy is, we took BOLD, the training, and one of the exercises is the paper on the back, and then people go back and they write about you.
Yes.
And I never thought of myself as a leader. And the first time I did the BOLD, it was the second time I did BOLD. We did that exercise, and I read what people were writing, and they were using words like, leader and inspirational and all those things that I had no idea that I was.
Yeah.
Right.
They kind of go in exact opposite of what your brain tells you are.
The one compliment that I wanted more than anything was authentic. And that happened in one of those sessions. And when I saw the word authentic, I went, yay.
Yay. Because you're there.
Means they saw all of me.
Yeah.
Good, bad, and different, like all of me. And they understood that I am authentic, and I strive to be authentic.
Well, I think you are being your father's daughter and following his advice when he says, just be brave.
Be brave.
Just be brave.
Yep.
So is there anything we didn't talk about today? Did I fail to mention something or ask a question that you wanted to get across?
No, I think, I feel like we handled pretty much everything. I'm hoping that people got some nuggets out of this podcast.
Well, and we're going to put all of your contact information in the show notes. Once that book is ready to go, I know she will let me know, and we will get that out there in the show notes, and we'll make sure that we are doing that. But I'm sure, if you have something that is resting on your brain and on your heart, reach out to Susan. I'm sure she would be more than happy to just listen.
I am an ear. Yeah, like I listen, and that's one thing that it's that too has been a lesson. Just listening.
It's a skill that
it can
has also gone by the wayside a little bit.
If you just listen, and don't listen waiting to answer.
Right.
Right. You just
listen to hear what's being said.
Right. Because people want to be heard.
Yes.
Right. And that was one of the reasons why, honestly, that was one of the reasons why I wrote a book, because from years and years, we can talk about the movie.
Oh, okay.
There was a movie that was made about my dad, about what happened, about our family. It's not authentic.
Okay, let's put that out there. The unauthorized biography.
It's a little Hollywood. I was actually a creative consultant on the movie. So was my mother. It's called The Price of Vengeance. And it's with Michael Gross. He plays my father, the Family Ties dad. And he did a wonderful job. Like, the actors did really well with what they were given. I'll just say that.
Okay.
But it's now streaming on Peacock, so you can look it up. It's on Peacock. And a lot of the reason I wrote my book is because there has been a lot of perception of how I should have dealt with going through this experience.
Sure. Everybody's got an opinion.
In all different aspects. And so and the fact that I was kind of pushed aside for many years. And that's why I had to figure it out for myself. And so it was my time to tell my story, to educate others, because a lot of it too is in the law enforcement sector. There's still a lot of anger and pain around my dad's murder. And I feel like my book can help law enforcement families and law enforcement to understand that this is how I'm okay, guys. Like, I'm okay. And maybe if I'm okay, you can be okay.
You can be okay, and your kids can be okay.
Right. Yep.
Susan needed to be heard.
I did. Good purposes, not not my 15 minutes of fame, because that happened years ago. I want to take my journey. I want to take my story and help others through it.
And I'm sure, even if it's one person that has gone through some sort of trauma to the caliber that you and your family did, right, that even one little piece, if they can take one little piece out of your story and put that into their life and get them that much closer to peace, I guess.
Peace and healing.
Yeah. Then it's all been worth it.
Oh, absolutely.
So
it's life-changing.
Yeah. I love that. Well, Susan, thank you so much for being here with me. Again, Susan is a realtor in the greater Denver area. So if you are in need of one of those, make sure you grab her, and she will take really good care of your family.
I work with a lot of Texas folks.
Yeah, we got a lot of people in Texas and Colorado going back and forth. Yeah. So if you need her information, call me and I'll get you hooked up. As soon as that book becomes available, we'll make sure that information is out there as well. And
absolutely.
So again, thank you for listening to Crushing It With Your Tribe. As a Texas realtor, I am in the unique position to meet and know so many different people all across industries and doing so many great things. And I'm just so happy to be able to share that and them with everyone. So we will see you next time. Thanks, Susan.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for Crushing It With Your Tribe with Texas realtor Robin McCoy. Check out all the show notes for contact information on Robin and her guests, and to access your free resources and information discussed on this episode. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a conversation. Thanks again, and we will see you next time on Crushing It With Your Tribe with Robin McCoy.